Okay, are the two elected members on visuals? Because otherwise I can't see their hands.
They will be able to turn their video on.
I might just ask the elected members if they could please turn their visuals, their cameras on, please. That will, thank you very much, Councillor Bairns.
Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you now. I can see everybody. That's beautiful. And I can see Mr. Scambler as well. That's very helpful. Thank you. And you can see and hear us okay?
Very clear.
I can.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, look, apologies for the late start. We were just organising ourselves. I'd like to declare the meeting open at 9:45. Just for the purpose of introductions in the room here, we have myself, Karen Hyde, as presiding member. We also have Mr. Ian Birch as deputy presiding, Ms. Nima Premji as specialist member. We've also got the applicants and presenters in the room here, and officers from the DAP itself. And on screen we have Mr. Scambler, who's an officer at the City of Gosnells, and Councillor Karen Bairns, City of Gosnells elected member, and Councillor David Good, City of Gosnells elected member. All present and correct. So I would like to open and acknowledge the traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present of the land on which the meeting is being held. Obviously, it's being recorded and live streamed, so it would be pertinent for members to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Apologies, we have none. Members on leave of absence, we have none. Voting of minutes, they're available on the DAP website. And if we turn to part B, matters, declaration of due consideration. Could members please acknowledge they've given consideration to all materials by raising their hand? Thank you. Yes, due consideration has been given by all. I've not received any disclosures of interest. Is that correct? All good? Okay. So before we proceed with the Form 1 application, what we will do is allow our presenter. It said 3 minutes on the form, but if you need a couple of minutes longer, I'm happy to be a bit flexible, given you're the only item today. It would be very good because we all have had the ability to read your presentation material if you concentrate on the key points that you want us to consider this morning. And then, as you know, Nick, I'll open up for questions. And then after that, I'll open up for questions of Mr. Scambler at the City, where people may have some other questions to put to him. So we're just waiting for the technology to get up so that everybody can see the presenter. There we go. Might just need to tilt it. There we are. We've got Mr. Hidding on screen. When you're ready.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this morning. Nick Hidding Urban Planning, representing Regent Motors for this proposed dealership development. The development presents really an excellent opportunity in this part of Kennewick to construct something that's quite significant, really well designed, likely to be a draw card for this area and foster new development in the locality. The attachments at 7 through 9 really show the way in which this development will present to the public realm, quality design, high quality finishings, and obviously being held by a major tenant being Ford. In reviewing the Responsible Authority report prepared by the City of Gosnells, there's a recommendation for approval in front of you this morning, which we support. We've been working closely with Mr. Scambler on this application, including having the opportunity to review some draft conditions. And as set out in my submission, we have a number of comments to make in respect of the conditions. And I'll just focus on a couple of those. First, condition 3, which is a restriction on the southernmost vehicular crossover to Albany Highway. That's required to be reconfigured for left out turning only. The justification that came from Main Roads, this is a Main Roads-led condition, which the city has adopted pretty well verbatim in its recommendation. The condition that stems from Main Roads is really because there's a view of Main Roads that there's a need to reconfigure the bus stop and bus embayment, that Main Roads doesn't support those works and therefore doesn't want to support the left-in component of that crossover. That crossover has been there for many years as it is, and we're really just updating it to include the appropriately designed splays to allow the normal vehicle movements in that area. So as Main Roads' position appears premised on the supposed works to the bus stop, which we aren't doing, it's considered that that dot point should be removed from that condition to allow left-in, left-out movements as was always proposed. And there can be treatments done to that crossover to prevent right turn movements. There was a proposal before to put a median strip in the middle of Albany Highway to preclude right turn movements. However, that's coming away. That doesn't have to happen, but you can actually do treatments on the crossover itself to assist with that. So I'd like the panel's consideration of that particular point. Condition 4, as I've set out, it's really a timing issue. We don't want to be held to do a 15% design before the submission of a building permit. Regent Motors are on a very urgent timeframe to construct this development. They have to, got time pressures really to relocate their current Ford premises to this site. So it's quite an urgent construction program that they have. So condition 4 currently requires the 15% design to be done before you submit a building permit. And we'd like the flexibility to do that during the course of the normal construction. And it also could be placed as an advice note because it's something that needs to happen anyway.
And just at 3 minutes, a couple more minutes.
And the other main one is really just condition 11. Condition 11 requires the land protection plan of Main Roads. I'm not talking about a planning control area. We're not talking about a reservation under the MRS. Condition 11 again is a Main Roads condition asking us to set aside that land protection area as a separate lot. We think that's premature, given it's not in a planning control area, it's not in a reservation, and it could change. Main Roads plans could change to something different, and then this is really a redundant thing to have been done. So we'd like the panel's consideration for actually deleting that condition. Condition 1419, as is set out in my submission, just do some minor amendments or changes to those two. Otherwise, thank you for the opportunity and happy to answer your questions. Gavin is also here from Regent Motors and talk to any operational issues or questions.
Lovely, thank you. So we have the presenter and we have the applicant for Regent Motors. I'll ask the elected members first if they have any questions of the presenter. Councillor Good.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I guess my questions relates to two things. First of all, the time delays in getting this to the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel for when it was first lodged, but also particularly how do we come about this misunderstanding of condition 3, which, bear in mind, it's a very detailed report. And I'm just curious about supposed bus works, which actually aren't bus works, and yet to do these changes is like kind of strange how it got to be this late stage. Can you please give me an explanation as to why the confusion?
I can answer that. Do I need to be unmuted?
No, we can. We've got.
Okay. Look, the first question, the part of the question was delay. Look, this application obviously was referred to Main Roads, and Main Roads typically takes their full allotted time to respond to the application. They did so. We then responded to that in the form of amended plans and further information, which of course has to go back to Main Roads yet again. They take their full 30 days to come back. So that's the reason why there's some delay. And to the point of confusion about bus stop works, look, I can't speak for Main Roads itself, but there's that, it appears from their referral response that their position is based on the fact that they believe there's works required to the bus stop, which we aren't doing. So Mr. Scambler can also perhaps talk to his side of the story in dealing with Main Roads, but our position is that Main Roads has said something, and that's where it's come into the mix, and our responses as we've outlined.
Okay, would you like to add anything to that? Have you had direct dialogue with Main Roads on the matter?
On that particular matter, no, only through the referral process. We had met with them a long time ago when we first reached out and spoke with the council. We also spoke with Main Roads and got some direction, which then went through the formal process, and it took a couple of processes to do that. And this is quite a surprise regarding the bus stop in what they call embankment changes, because we've never proposed to touch it.
Okay, Councillor Good, does that answer your question?
Thanks, Madam Presiding Member. It certainly does, and I'm very grateful to Mr. Hitting for the explanation. One of the reasons I asked the initial question about timing was I always dislike it if either local government or any government departments delay applications for development. I just don't like delays. So it's good when we can get onto the task, meet required deadlines, and get it done so we don't hold you up. In particular, the fact that you yourself have an urgency to get this development done and approved, and I'd hate to think that we were slowing you down. So thank you for that, and thank you for the advice regarding all the actual comments in terms of what came through to us. It gave us a detailed explanation of what you were looking for, but that item 3 did confuse me, going, how do you say something which is actually wasn't on the agenda? I'm going, this is strange, but you've given a full detailed explanation. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Baines, did you have any questions?
Nothing from me, thank you.
All right, I might look to the panel. Neva, did you have some questions?
Just a quick one. Again, the condition 3 I was confused with, because when I read the report and what Mariah is coming back, when you did finally get this second dot point, did you go back to Main Roads?
There was little time at the late part of the process when Main Roads' second referral advice came through to deal with that before the RA was due to come before you. So we didn't want to delay for another month and a half when we've got an urgent time frame. And we also believe it's sort of incorrectly based anyway. I would rather move forward, present the facts to you today, and see if we can get a result for our client to actually start development.
Thank you. No, that's all.
Okay, Mr. Birch, any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple. Firstly, in relation to condition 3, there's already a slip lane there, but that's going to be modified. Is that at the crossover? I think, is that correct?
No, there's no change to any the slip lane that you refer. I think that's the bus embayment itself. It's not actually a slip lane to this development. We're certainly not changing anything to do with that. It's just the crossover coming out pretty much as it is now. We're just sort of doing displays as they're needed. Because an old crossover is one of those old ones which just sort of goes straight into the pavement. And there's another crossover directly next door to it which we're removing and making good, but this is the main one which we just want to reinstate pretty much as it is.
You suggested a possible, what they call seagull type.
Yeah, just normal city specs or normal main road specs.
Would you see that need to be a condition, or that's something that would be resolved with Main Roads?
Would ordinarily have to be resolved with Main Roads anyway. There's another condition further down which talks about applying to Main Roads under their legislation, but it has to happen anyway. To do any works within Main Roads Road Reserve, you have to make an application for works to work within their road reserve anyway for Main Roads approval.
Thank you. And there's also obviously you don't have any problems with making the full movement for the northern crossover.
No, there's no issue with that. I think that's
unusual. Usually it's the other way. Things are the other way around. Okay. And it says removal of the median strip as identified on the plan. I couldn't see that median.
So on the site plan, I don't know if it's in front of everybody, but there's a very small median strip that was proposed through the process to preclude right turn movements.
It's a little obscured.
Top.
Just
top.
Happening in there.
Yeah,
But that can come away with. That's not a problem.
All right. Thank you. And in relation to, so generally with that left in, left out, do you see that as sort of essential to the circulation?
100%. I mean, we don't only have Ford going in here. There's a potential for 2 other dealership brands to go in here. It's nice to have the circulation, the flow, sometimes a separation of customers to the different dealership premises in that area. So it's very essential to have the 2 crossovers in the locations that they are to assist with those movements. And also service vehicles. Yeah.
The delivery vehicles for the 19 metre for bringing the vehicles in, the access, I couldn't pick it up in the TIA. Is that from?
So it's from Albany Highway. It'll come into the northern crossover, come in, unload pretty much in front of the Ford dealership, and then exit out the southern crossover and go left again, north, typically. Yeah.
So without that, without the sorry. Without the left in, they'd have to use the full,
Yes.
The northern one or Osage.
Correct.
Thank you. And just in relation to condition 4, I notice that's on the opposite side of the road.
So I think that condition talks to the requirement under condition 3, but also perhaps condition 3.1, that first dot point. So it's talking about any 15% design for any crossover upgrades within their road reserve. They talk to the Albany Highway, McIntyre Way intersection, but that's just, I think, locationally is what they're talking about. We're not doing any work to the intersection.
Yeah. But just if you're suggesting it be made an advice note,
We don't want it to be prior to applying for building permit, because that holds up the program.
if is an alternative to make perhaps loaded later in the process,
Correct.
would you see?
I don't mind it being prior to occupation or something like that, but it probably has to be done way before that.
Yeah,
Because you can't occupy without it being done.
Yeah.
But similarly, it can be an advice note because you have to apply to them 15%, 85, 100 anyway to do it. So they know they have to do it. I don't think it even needs to be a condition, but I'll leave it to you.
I guess it's just if it's, and I understand that you want to get on with this and you want to get a building permit process going, and there might be a small risk that you get down the track and find out the main road's got a problem with your 15%. I guess that it's unlikely that would affect the building permit. So it wouldn't affect the buildings themselves.
No, it wouldn't affect the buildings itself, but assuming we get a development approval, these guys want to press on to full documentation, lodge a building permit.
No, I
So
understand.
if we do the 15% design and it gets stuck at main roads, we can't lodge a building permit.
Yeah,
And that's where I want to de-risk that for.
Yeah. I understand that.
Okay, you done?
Thank you. Sorry.
Just while you're getting your thoughts together, I might just ask a question in relation to condition 3. Obviously in main roads correspondence, they did talk about, alternate designs for the crossover. And it's sort of hard to tell, but in your presentation, you do superimpose some red lines on that particular location, which obviously the display does seem to sort of enter the bus bay in the way that it's presented. That practically, I mean, that's just an angle practically on the ground. That might not be the case. It would appear that the bus bay at the moment probably also borrows a bit of the existing crossover too, just at the end there. So there is a confluence of bus and crossover. You actually have 2 crossovers at the moment in the development which are adjacent to each other. Had you actually considered just kind of nudging it along a little bit so that it didn't actually in any way misunderstanding or practically or otherwise impact that bus embayment?
It goes to the flow requirements of design.
The design of the showroom building for multi-franchise, so Ford plus potentially 2 others, with one being on the left side of the building, one being on the right. It's to provide accesses for both brands, for both customer sets, but also to give us the flow through the site so that people aren't having to sort of turn back on themselves to get out. They can actually drive through and drive out.
Right.
So it's to try to achieve all those outcomes. So
are you saying that would be too tight? If
yes,
because you're only talking about meters, aren't you, to sort of get away from the bus?
I suppose it depends on where it lines up. And Nick and I had this chat outside. It depends where it lines up in relation to the building, because already it's past the line of the building. If you're coming north and turning left, you're already past the building. So you turn in and you have to turn back around the building to the left.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
The further we go north other way, the more we're going to swing that back and it becomes very tight.
Okay. You realise, however, that you might be forced into that corner ultimately if main roads don't like your crossover design. When you get to that point, and the further down the track that you provide your 15%, I guess, the higher the risk it is to you. I just want to be clear that you've got that understanding of all the consequences involved in what you're asking.
We understand that.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'll come back to you, Mr. Birch. Did you have anything further? No, you've.
Just in relation to the creating the lot, it's got to be subdivided off. I would imagine, do you see that as taking longer than to get to putting a shovel in the ground?
Yes, definitely. If I may speak on that, we've also started the process to amalgamate the lots already. That's part of the development. So we're doing that, and then to hive off another one, and that seems to take some time. The next phase to do that would also take some time, and we're literally behind time dramatically at the moment. So any additional delays become pretty impactful.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, if I can speak just to that further, we object to that in principle anyway, just because it's not even a planning control area or a reservation itself. It's a main road and land protection plan.
I understand. Thank you. Any other questions of the presenter or the representative of the developer at this point? Are we all good to proceed? Now, the next part would then be for panel members to ask the city officers, Mr. Scambler, if there's anything that you'd like clarified as a result of that presentation or answers to those questions. I'll go back the way round that we started. Councillor Goods, any questions?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Mr. Scambler, obviously you've gone through these details in a fine-tooth comb. Do you have any concerns or issues regarding the points raised by Mr. Heading?
Not specifically, David. I mean, condition 4, as far as the timing of that goes, look, I don't really have any objection to, deferring it to after a building permit. The works to those crossovers are going to need to occur prior to the development opening anyway, but I do have the same kind of slight concern as the presiding member, in that if it gets too far down the road and main roads don't allow the proposed modifications as what we're currently looking at, then it throws a big question as to then can the development actually be completed if main roads are going to hold up approval of the crossovers or ultimately the design. So, but I do take the point that Mr. Heading made, in that they obviously have a pretty constrained timeline. It's always difficult with main roads conditions, because as far as delegation goes, if the city doesn't agree with the conditions, then it kicks it down to the DPLH to then provide a report and recommendations on. In this instance, obviously, because main roads had taken the length of time that they had, firstly to provide their initial comment on the application, and then secondly to provide further comments on the revisions that Nick had made, we're staring down the barrel of a pretty lengthy timeframe. So we ended up adopting main roads recommendations as they are, and then it's at the discretion now of I guess the panel as to whether they think that all of those conditions are fair and reasonable. So little bit difficult for the city to turn around and say, well, we don't necessarily agree with all of them. And we, in some respects, I agree to most of the conditions, but do take the point from Nick that some of them are a little curious. However, in order to get the report in front of the panel, we adopted the conditions as per Main Road's recommendation. Yeah, I think in condition 4, if we deferred it to occupancy, I think if the panel was comfortable with that, and as long as the applicant was of the understanding that they'd need to effectively get all of that work done before they could occupy, I'd probably suggest that they'd want to start that process as soon as approval is granted, just so that they don't get a surprise at the end when they try and occupy the building and Main Roads are still messing around with the potential design or approval of those crossovers. I don't have any issue in the reconfiguration of the crossover as proposed by Nick. I do take the point that there's currently a conflict between the bus stop and the existing crossover, and you know the changes that are proposed aren't going to really they're not going to resolve that conflict anyway, but they're probably not going to make them any worse than what they already are. That crossover currently is a full movement crossover. You know, I mean, as it stands, that potential conflict by removal of full movement down to now left in, left out, or left out is going to be reduced, but you've still got the issue of the bus stop being in that location. I guess condition 11, Main Roads will always put this on where they need land, and I do think it probably is a little premature. Despite Main Roads having full designs for the road completed, they don't actually have a time frame of when those works are likely to occur. And take what Nick's said on board in that making them set aside the land now is going to cause additional delays. Main Roads are still within their rights under the current amalgamation subdivision application that's before them with the DPLH to actually request that be seated as part of that process. I think Main Roads are, Main Roads have a standard operating procedure in that they will try and get every single thing that they can at every point that they can, and it's not always for the best development outcome. It's purely to secure their interest in the road network. It's for no other purpose. So from a planning point of view, is it fair and reasonable? Maybe questionable. And I guess that's for the JDAC panel members to determine as to whether or not it's appropriate at this point.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Scambler. Are you satisfied with your answers, Councillor Good?
Yes, indeed, Madam Presiding Member. Thank you very much, Mr. Scambler.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bairns, did you have any questions of Mr. Scambler?
No, thank you. My questions have been answered. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. Ms. Brumshy, did you have questions?
Yes, I have a few questions to yourself, Brenton. First of all, this in all the conversations that you've been having with Main Roads, did anywhere along the line they had indicated to the local government regarding the left in, left out crossover arrangements? Did they turn around and give any indication that they would not only accept, it will only permit left out and not left in?
No, so to be honest, there was very little discussion with Main Roads. Other than the city following them up on timeframes as far as the referral response was concerned, they didn't actually give the city a lot of indication as to which way they were thinking with this application. There'd been pretty extensive pre-lodgement consultation between the applicant and Main Roads, but at no point did Main Roads effectively identify to the city that they were planning on amending the movement proposed for each of the crossovers. You will see though that in Main Road's recommendation, they did actually say here are a suite of conditions that could be applied if it was to be determined ahead of, I guess, those modifications being made. But then ultimately they provided an option whereby the applicant could go back and further liaise with Main Roads to, I guess, address the concerns of Main Roads prior to it being determined. So, to be honest, there was very little correspondence from Main Roads, with the exception of the letter that had been provided.
All right, thank you. The other question I have is to do with condition 16. Now, through the report, you mentioned that the applicant is aware that they would have to put in a separate DA, which is on page 12 of 97 of our agenda, for the signage. So when I go back to your condition 16, which I see that you've taken straight from Main Roads conditions, and it has been put in the signage, did you think it might be worthwhile, or you could provide clarification, we should strengthen the conditions such that it is actually clearly stated in the condition, or it could be an advisory note, that the applicant put forward a separate DA with respect to the signage with regard to the 2 pylons? Is it or will that be captured somewhere else in the building permit or the Main Roads permit for work over crossovers? Where can that be captured? Because you are making a statement in the report that the applicant understands that, but I don't see anywhere in the conditions or even as an advisory note.
Yeah, I guess that could be strengthened, for sure. In that we could provide an advice note to say that a separate application would be required for the pylon signs. I'm not adverse to that. I guess because the detail of the pylon signs wasn't provided, and the applicant actually had stated in their application document itself that they would be applying for those separately. Yeah, I mean, look, we could indeed put an advice note in to say that would be required. But as it kind of sits, the signage for the forward on the building, we're relatively comfortable with that, and we wouldn't be expecting that we'd get an application, a separate application for that signage. It would literally only be the pylon signs.
Thank you.
Or you could put we could put a cloud around where the pylon signs are notated on the site plan and say subject to a further separate DA. You could do that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Birch, any questions of Mr. Scambler?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in relation to condition 4, if we were to change it or make Mr. Hidding has suggested an advice, I think advice note, you've indicated you think it should remain a condition. Is that correct?
Well, look, I'm comfortable either way, because it's a requirement that the applicant needs to meet under separate legislation with Main Roads in any case. So if it's an advice note, I would be comfortable with that. I guess the only difficulty, if it remains at building permit and it's an advice note, there's nothing that the city can actually the city wouldn't be enforcing it if it's an advice note. So we wouldn't be checking that up. That would be purely back on the applicant then to determine or be comfortable that they've complied with that before they either commence construction or what have you. So
if it was a condition, if as you indicate, occupancy might be a bit late in the process. Is there another trigger point that, so it doesn't hold up the building licence? And I think the applicants acknowledge the risk and they're prepared to take that, but they do want to get on with things. Is there another trigger point that we could use where they...
Yeah, well, you could do it prior to occupancy. I guess the condition, if you were to do it at occupancy, I guess you probably wouldn't want to have it at only a 15% design at occupancy. You'd probably want it to be completely designed and constructed for occupancy.
Yeah, but they understand, they understand that risk, but they can't occupy without the crossover.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Be constructed. Okay, thank you. And just condition 11, you've commented on that. Just a couple of other small ones. Condition 19, that seems to be unnecessary, or it could be deleted or made an advice note, but it's not something. It's something that
I'll get to you in a minute, Councillor Good. Yep.
Something that needs to be done anyway. And was one other.
14 was
Oh, 14 was add vehicle loading and display. Are you comfortable with that request?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Good, you had a supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Just in regarding the condition 16, just going back to that, because I remember reading extensively about the commentary on the signage, and I noticed at the bottom of page 7 and the top of page 8, there's a particular paragraph saying, it is noted that the pylon signs shown on the site plan are notional only and have not been considered as part of this application. The applicant understands a separate development application is required for the signs. I just want to make sure that was very clearly understood, because whether that was put in as an advice note or a condition saying, we note that you have to apply. Just want to make that point. It's actually in the report, quite detailed about signage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Scambler before we proceed with the item? Are we all good? Yeah. All right, lovely. Thank you very, very much for your responses there. So, turning to item 3, part B, we have a Form 1 application which recommends approval subject to a number of conditions. Let's get that on the table first of all, assuming that members are fully comfortable that they have sufficient information to determine this today. If there is any doubt in anybody's mind, then obviously there is an option for a procedural motion to defer to require further information. So we should just bear that in mind. But we do have a recommendation. So do I have a mover, please, for that as the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Good. Is there a seconder, please, for that? Councillor Baynes, yes? Just beat you to it there a little bit.
You look at that one. I'm looking at that one.
Councillor Good, would you like to talk to the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Fellow panellists, I'm very supportive of this application. I think it generally applies to all the planning framework in terms of fulfills most obligations. I do note the conditions that are there, and whilst we talked about the bus embayment and the crossover, my thought processes are we're a Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel. Our job is to make the decision when nothing is actually changing in that aspect. It's been that way all the time. I don't actually have a problem with that, so I'm very comfortable with the fact of Mr. Heading's recommendations there, which I'd like to agree with. I think it's an excellent proposal, a great entrance statement, if I might say so, in terms of via the Kenwit Link and Albany Highway coming into the city of Gosnells. And from the proponent's point of view, for them to relocate arguably 600-700 metres, according to my calculations, from where they are in Maddington to this location, it brings them all together. I understand their point of view. We've had 2 other major new vehicle dealerships and showrooms in the last few years be developed. So it's a very impressive part for this particular area of the Kenwick Link. hence I think it'll make a great landmark one day. But so I think having $7.8 million development, very impressive showrooms. As I said, I think it fulfills most of the planning framework, and I'm very supportive of it, and it should be an excellent development. And I don't really see any major dramas with the left in, left out of that part of the Albany Highway. Kenwick Link takes a significant amount of traffic, and it generally peters out a fair bit past that particular area. So a great development proposal, and I hope my fellow panelists support it.
Thank you, Councillor. We might take all of the proponents' points as amending motions once we've got heard from our seconder, if that's all right.
I was hoping you'd say that. Thank you.
That's all right. Councillor Vance, would you like to speak to the motion as seconder?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Councillor Good. This will be a really fantastic development for the city of Gosnells. These car dealerships are always well presented and well maintained. Will certainly uplift that area of Kenwick along Albany Highway and Kenwick Link. So I hope it can proceed without any issues that we're concerned about with main roads, but I look forward to it happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak or propose any amending motions? Yes, we can move to those now. Yes.
Amending motions.
All right.
You can also, I'll go through what I.
Ms. Prungy is going to move some amending motions, and she'll just read those out, and then we will seek a seconder once we're clear what's before us.
For condition 3.
Yes.
Permit left in, left out.
The second dot point.
Second dot point is first.
And is that delete that?
Delete that point, and then to allow for, or we could amend it. I don't know which one would be easier, but to amend for left in, left out.
I think that's what the plan already shows.
The plan shows.
Yeah.
So if you delete
sorry,
that dot point, we fall back to the plans which we're approving.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the first part of your amending motion. Did you want other matters as well? Condition 4.
Condition 4, I think the occupancy of requires the submission to actually change that prior to the occupancy of the building.
Prior to occupancy. And condition 11.
I would leave condition 11 as is.
Okay, we can come back to that if anybody else would like to suggest it. Condition 14.
Condition 14, agree that I think it should be put, we should include the vehicle display bays and unloading, which is already permitted.
Yes.
So it's, I think, a minor amendment to condition 14.
Yes. Condition 19.
Condition 19, happy for that to go to an advice note.
Yes.
And in addition, I'll just like to propose another
a new advice note,
whereby the applicant, well, I don't know the right words.
With regard to condition 16, the applicant is advised
to submit a development application for the
pylon signs.
Pylon signs.
Okay.
Those are my.
Do we have a seconder, please, for those amending motions? I'm happy to second those. Did anybody wish to speak against those amending motions, or have anything further that they wish to say in support of those amending motions? If not, we'll put those. Are we all clear on those amending motions? We'll put those to the vote. All those in favour of those amending motions, please raise your hand. Thank you, that's unanimous. Did anybody wish to delete condition 18, which the applicant also raised? Did anybody wish to amend that motion? That condition, pardon me.
18.
No, 11, sorry. Condition 11.
Gee, I'd like to speak
You'd
the
like,
motion, and I'll move that.
you'd like to move an amending motion to condition 11?
I would, firstly.
You can't speak to it till you got a seconder. I'll second you.
Well, I was just speaking to the motion first, and then I was going to move an amendment. I'm speaking, I want to speak.
Oh, I see, all right,
Want to speak in support of the
as we
motion.
are at the moment. All right, very good, go
Sorry.
ahead.
and then I'll
confusion.
move an amendment.
Mr. Birch is just going to speak about what we've got on the table,
Well,
and then he's going to move an amendment.
I just want to say a couple of things. I support the application, and I think it's been very thoroughly prepared, very thoroughly assessed, and I don't want to appear as a knocker of any particular government instrumentality, but I find it extraordinary that after there's been mention made of the amount of time that it's taken Main Roads to deal with this application, and they haven't even, I don't know whether they've been to the site, because how could they get something so fundamentally incorrect?
However,
and so, well, in saying that, I can't see any grounds for maintaining that condition, that dot point, to change to just take out one of the access points for that southern crossover. The other thing, so I won't go any further. I'm in full support of the application with the amendments, and just I will move the deletion of condition 11, as I agree with the comments that have been made that I haven't seen any grounds under planning regulation for us to impose that condition. It doesn't take away the protection, the ultimate protection of the road widening that is already in place and can take place. I think I question the validity of that.
all right. So you're moving
I'm moving
to delete
condition
condition
11.
11.
Be deleted.
I'm happy to second that. Did you want to speak any further to it? You're comfortable with what you said? I also find, as Mr. Birch does, somewhat a fragile condition, given that it's not part of a planning control area at present. I do understand these things occur prior to, but they are at a very, very preliminary stage, and therefore I think that this condition doesn't meet the test of certainty or reasonableness. So on that basis, I can't support that condition being included. So happy to second the motion, the amending motion to delete that. Did anybody wish to speak against that amending motion? Let's put that amending motion to the vote then. Those in favour of deleting condition 11? And that's unanimous as well. Thank you. Were there any other amending motions that members wish to make to this? No? Okay, so just to recap then, we have deleted the second dot point of condition 3. We have added prior to occupancy for condition 4. We have deleted condition 11. We have added vehicle display bays and loading and unloading land uses to condition 14. We have deleted condition 19. We have placed, we've got
Condition 16.
we have placed condition 16 as an
We've
No,
added an advisory
we've added
note.
an advice note to condition 16, advising the applicant that they require to place a separate development application in for those. I think those are all the amendments that we've made. So I put that
Sorry,
motion.
can I just ask a question? With condition 19, did you make that an advice note? Or
No,
just
we
deleted
deleted it.
Deleted it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So with those amendments,
Just so to clarify that I had the amendment motion was to change it to an advice.
oh, is it to an advice?
That's the
I've
no
got-
works in
No,
Kenwick, Lincoln, Albany.
yeah, I mean, you can put it as advice note or you can delete it.
What did you say, Nina?
I think it was deleted.
I thought you said to delete.
I think I said deleted.
Was I
Okay.
was I wrong?
That sounds like I was wrong. That's right.
Because it's part of another legislation.
You know that anyway, don't you?
I think it can be deleted.
Well, we voted.
Yes.
We voted on that basis. Okay, so with all of that said, now we're all clear. Those in favour of the motion before us as amended, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. There's a bit of a delay in terms of the imagery for this room and that room, so that's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much. So just referring very, very quickly back to the agenda, we have nothing more for Form 2s or SAT reconsiderations on this agenda. As Part C, we do note those matters before the State Administrative Tribunal and the Supreme Court Appeals. We do not have any general business today, so I thank everybody for attending and participating and contributing to the meeting, and draw us to a close at 10:34. See you next time.
Thank you very much,
Thank
and a
you.
very good morning to you all.
Sorry, Ryan, that was
That's all right.
a
Get
hiccup,
around to it.
but that's all right. I think it was discussed. It could be advisory.